Hello, and welcome to the Digital Workspace Works podcast. I'm Ryan Purvis, your host, supported by our producer Heather Bicknell. In this series, you'll hear stories and opinions from experts in the field, stories from the front lines, the problems they face and how they solved them, the areas they focused on from technology, people and processes, to the approaches they took that will help you to get to the grips with the digital workspace inner workings.
Well, how was your week so far? How are you doing?
We're packing, so it's busy.
Yeah, I bet.
So I've packed 2 bags. Well, I had one backpack packed a while ago, and I'm on my 3rd bag, and that's about 5 kilos overweight, so I need to cut that down. Most of it's books, so I'm going to have to take some books out. Unfortunately, they're old books, so we want to keep them because they're almost not family heirlooms, but they're really good kids' books, and they're quite valuable in many ways. So that's the fun at the moment, and then just trying to organize the logistics of moving. It's nice going that side because everything's set up, but it's still the closing off of loose ends on this side, and technology is helping a lot. Being able to cancel things through apps as opposed to phone calls and sending in silly forms and stuff like that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I remember when the airlines came out with their mobile apps, and that was such a better experience than having your pass on your phone and managing all of that.
You say that, but that's funny enough one of our stressful areas, because when we bought our tickets more than a year ago, in fact, I don't even know when we bought them. We bought them October 2020. Yeah, 2020. We can't change our tickets at the moment because they're so old that they're no longer in the system. They've been aged out. And I rebooked them for the 1st. We want to fly the 2nd now. And that's creating a huge problem because they have to go and find what the fare was back in October 2020 to recalculate what I have to pay in. So yeah, it's not the technology that you think it is. It's amazing how and I suppose the data volumes they deal with make sense, but you also think, well, if you did the update last week, why haven't you kept the record in for this week? Because surely it's going to be used again.
Yeah, no, now I'm curious. So we had actually planned a flight and then canceled in March, when everything shut down because of COVID. So we've had these credits that we just kept pushing out until eventually the day we take a flight again. So now I'm wondering how that's all gonna get managed when that day finally arrives. It's a fun time we live in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, this is the big episode 100. We have made it to this milestone. So
we have. I did want to watch the movie again, which we wanted to talk about, but I haven't got there, as you may have guessed. But it's fine. It's etched on my brain, so we can talk through it.
I did. I had it on in the background last night, and then I took a bunch of notes because what I really thought would be interesting for us to talk about are some of the technologies in the Dune universe. So yes, episode 100, we decided we're going to discuss Dune, starting kind of with the recent Dune film that we were, anxiously waiting on for so long. And then I thought we could dig into some of the unique and creative applications of technology and kind of what technology means in the Dune universe. But yeah, I'd love to hear. I know it took you a while to get your hands on it. So what was your impression of the new Dune film?
Well, maybe first let's talk about that. So the first thing is I had to pay for it. I paid about £16 to watch it on Apple TV, only to have it a week later, and that was a rental. Only for it a week later to become an own. I could buy it for £16. So I was a little bit irritated by that. But I thought the movie was really good. I thought that they covered the story really well. I think we mentioned this before. When I read the book, I found the book very difficult to read because of the language that the author used. It's a little bit, I don't want to say old English, but it's just a funny version of English. But I think the movie kept to the story so well. And even though I read the book probably a year and a half ago, watching the movie, I was like, oh yeah, that's that part. I can understand this, etc. So I was able to join the dots pretty well. And I think they cast the characters really well. So they all fitted what I had in my mind for who the characters were. Generally speaking, I think there was one or two that were maybe 50-50, but for the most part, it was a really good movie and really well done.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think the decision to split it into two movies was the right call, because when it comes to these, big sci-fi or fantasy movies, I think when I think this beautiful cinematographic, rendition of it. Oh, we didn't get to see this piece or that. But for the most part, I think you're right. It's pretty spot on, especially with, all the major plot elements are pretty much captured there. So yeah, I think they did a great job, and I'm excited to watch the sequel when it comes out.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked, I think Duncan was played by, I think he was the perfect actor. I'm trying to think what his name was now.
Jason Momoa.
That's it. Yeah. And I'm actually, when you read the book and he dies, you feel sad. But when you see it's Jason Momoa, and I've always been a fan of his, even back to his Stargate days. We won't talk about his career before that. I was sad when he died as well. And even when you get to, I hope everyone's watched the movie, to the final.
It's probably going to be a little spoilery today, but
yeah, well, you had enough time to watch it. If you get to the end fight scene where Paul fights the what do they call them? I can't remember the name of what the tribe is. Even that, the Fremen, yeah, even that was perfectly tied back to the book, and you had the same emotions of him, coming through and beating himself, because that's really what he. I mean, yes, obviously fight the warrior and kill the warrior, but he had to beat himself too, and that was also very well acted.
Yeah, no, I thought Timothée Chalamet was a good version of Paul. I still don't really buy those actors. I love the actors who played his parents, but I have a hard time buying them as, I don't know, for some reason, his parents. They're like not old enough. I don't know. There's not enough distance between the real actors, and that like breaks my immersion.
It's almost a space travel. Dilations.
Yeah.
That's how I justify it in my head.
So yeah, you want to talk about some of the tech, and I can give some of the unique backgrounds to why this is so special in the Dune universe.
Yeah, so I think the shields were interesting, the personal shields, because when you watch the movie or read the book, so they talk about fighting with swords. It's not very clear in the book to why they're fighting in swords for a while, and then when you look at them fighting in sort of the first third of the movie, and you see that the shield can deflect against a fired weapon versus a slow moving weapon, and that's where the swords come in, and they're able, and they show how they get through the shield. I thought that was quite an interesting depiction of what technology could be available.
Yeah, I think so. Two things there. I think there's this backdrop to the whole Dune universe that many centuries in the past, humans had their big war with machines, with AI. So AI, computers, like digital stuff doesn't really exist in the Dune universe, because that's all been banned after that, revolution, uprising that happened, in the distant past. So that's kind of an interesting backdrop to the technology in the setting of the Dune book. And then the shield you're describing, something that I pulled out more in my research, this is probably touched effect. So there's like this gravitational effect. It's kind of not explained in detail, but it's what's behind those force shields that the fighters wear that don't allow fast movement in, where you have to do like a slow, deliberate movement to pierce the shield. It's behind the Holtzman drive, which is the technology that lets space travel happen. And then the suspenders, which are what the Baron Harkonnen wears, the technology that allows him to be suspended but it can also just suspend other heavy things. And then
Mhm.
glow globes, which are one of my, I guess, I don't know, if there's like a technology from the Dune universe that I'd love to have in my home, it's the glow globe. It's basically just their version of a light that floats around and can follow you and stuff, which, is just kind of neat. So, but yeah, I didn't know there was this whole principle, I suppose, behind that whole group of Dune technologies.
Yeah, you mustn't forget the thumper.
Yeah, that's a good one. The thumper that creates the rhythmic pounding so that the sandworm is attracted to it.
Yeah, I found that was also quite good with the music, because the music almost also worked with the landscapes and the worms as well. I mean, throughout the movie, I kept wanting to go back and get Dune to the game and install it to play it again, because it does bring, one of the nice things about the book is it's so well conceived with the different houses and the, I want to say the politics of it, but there's this thing that you want to get involved, do your play your own strategy to see how you do, because it is very strategic.
Yeah, was that your original exposure to Dune, was through the video game? That's kind of where you got like your first experience with Dune stuff?
Yeah, I can't remember timeline wise if it was before or after Command and Conquer. I think it was before Command and Conquer, and I remember getting Dune 2 and playing that, and it was quite a big thing to, and it was, I mean, those are your 2D real-time strategy games, and you could pick Conan's, or what's the blue team? Ateris? No?
Atreides?
Atreides, that's it. And then you had the green team, or greenhouse, and then you had the Freemans, and then you could have the Freemans that would be like a power up. You'd get a certain amount of them that can help you, and they're the only ones that get across the desert without being by the worms. And then of course you're mining for spice the whole time. And I thought also how they brought the effects of spice in to be quite a good thing as well, because that was never really clear to me in the book. Is it like cocaine, or is it something else? And it just ties back again to what we know as economics, supply and demand. So yeah, I think they did a good job with it.
Yeah, watching it, this was my third watch through last night, and the music really stood out to me. It's just so moody, and it fits so well, I think, with Paul's arc. And then you're right, the depictions of the spice, like one scene that really, I don't know, caught my attention. It's fun watching things like when there's so much care and detail and love put into a film, and you can keep watching it and pick out just the moments and think about all the work behind creating that moment. So one of them was in the still tent. So when Jessica and Paul are running after the Harkonnens have attacked, the palace they were living in, and they're on the run, they're hiding in the sand in a still tent, which is this Fremen technology that is a tent that gets buried in the sand, and then the tent catches your sweat and makes sure that moisture isn't coming out and reclaims the water. But there's moments in there where like the camera zooms in on it shows the moisture moving through tubes in the tent, and Paul has a glow globe out and the spice is like twinkling around the glow globe. So I don't know, I thought that was like a nice, it showed some of that technology from the Dune universe, but it was also just a really subtle way. Like, if you're a Dune fan, that's kind of all that's happening in the background as well.
Yeah, it's actually another piece of technology we didn't talk about, which is the moisture capturing suits that they wear, and how that's important to, and water is the lifeblood, the really valuable thing. So the Freemans don't see the spice as valuable, but they see the water as the most valuable thing. And even when Paul kills the Challenger, they drain all his blood for the liquid, because that's the important, cultural thing.
Yeah, no, the still suits, I think if I could own a piece of technology from the Dune universe, this would be up there for me. This suit that's been developed that is basically like, I don't know, putting a tight fitting suit over yourself so that you only lose a thimbleful of water a day, is what they say. But yeah, I mean, it's a crucial bit of technology to allow them to live in this hot, unrelenting desert with no moisture, and obviously a crucial part of the Dune films. But yeah, I think that's one thing that I like about, the technologies in this universe. I feel like it's a combination of sci-fi and it's a different version of sci-fi, because you have this backdrop of it's not digital, it's not computers, it's not AI, which is where a lot of kind of high sci-fi or more scientific versions tend to go. But because that doesn't exist here, you have more creative depictions of things like still suits.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's also interesting how it's a lot of futuristic shows always show huge technology advances, and you don't see much of that in this, as you say. But also what you do see is a general level of basics that they all have. They all have the same level, it doesn't matter which house they're on. They've all got starships, they've all got, they all work inside an empire. The weapons are all the same, generally speaking. So there is some level of shared knowledge. Now, what the game had is that there were obviously parts which each house had their own specialities. And I can't remember what those were. But I think the Harkonnens were known as the best soldiers with the best military equipment, whereas the Atreides were known more as political, say managerial types, but they were more there as diplomatic corps. And then the Green House, which I can't remember what their power was, they had their own thing, which I think was harvesting. I think they were the economic force. And it's interesting how that plays out technology-wise as well, because they don't have some of the detection stuff, because their speciality isn't war, their speciality is something else.
Yeah, I think some of that comes back to as well the sort of supernatural powers that exist in this universe, some of which are kind of developed or brainwashed or like bred into humanity by this point. So one of them that I thought would be fun to talk about, and maybe didn't come out as much in the film and is a bigger part of the book, are mentats. So the human computers, those whose minds have been shaped to be, exactly that, human supercomputers. They can calculate things very quickly. They can figure out probabilities. So each great house has their own like family mentat, and you see this depicted in the film. He rolls his eyes back in his head to quickly calculate something. But I just think that's such an interesting idea, that because we don't have, or humanity at this point doesn't have actual computers, that they have turned the human brain into a supercomputer of its own just by conditioning.
Yeah, it's actually, I remember that now, because wasn't Paul being educated through one of them during the sort of trip through to the, sorry, I'm thinking of different movies, might be getting confused, but he was being trained by one of them. And then when he got there, he was sort of connecting the dots as he was walking around going, oh yeah, this is what they told me about this thing. Yeah. Does that sound about right? Yeah.
Yeah, so Paul's like, you think about all the different like superpowers that exist in the movie, and Paul kind of has all of them. So that's another thing that I think is really hard to depict in a film, and you kind of have to pick and choose what special traits of Paul's you're going to show. But he was trained as a mentat as well. So not only is he this like, he has his mother's like mystical like witch like powers, but also the military, the training from Duncan, Idaho, from his father, and then the supercomputer ability of the mentats as well. So he's just like, the combination of all of the human technologies that exist in the universe, most of them anyway.
Do you know when the second movie is coming out?
I don't. it might be next year, the year after. Not soon enough. It can't be soon enough, but yeah, I think we still are waiting a little bit. Or, I don't actually, now I'm curious. But yeah, I'm hoping it's soon. I guess the other thing I know is that they're already planning for Dune Messiah as well, which is the Dune sequel, which I've read about like a third of. I'm still working my way through it. But that one, the directors talked about waiting until Timothy Chalamet is older, because Paul is older when Dune Messiah happens. So I think really cool if they got through another book in the series.
Yeah, that's interesting because there's 7 books, I think, and there's Children of Dune as well, which is also a couple of books. I need to actually start reading them again now that the movie's out, so I know what the next one's going to be about. Yeah.
I guess there were a few more technologies I wanted to maybe call out as interesting or unique to this universe, kind of runners up here. So one are the ornithopters. So they're like helicopter vehicles that have different kind of wings.
Yeah,
Sorry,
it's an interesting contraption, that, especially when he crashes and he's able to fly on one wing, which makes no sense physically.
Yeah, I do like, because the book, I think, talks about them as having these wings, these like fluttering wings. And I've always thought about it as more bird-like, but I like that they were kind of dragonfly-like in the film. I thought that was a cool depiction.
Oh, I always thought they were dragonfly-like. I think even in the book they're dragonfly.
Oh yeah,
the way they describe them. Oh, but you see, that could be the computer game, because in the computer game they look like dragonflies. Because you still use them to pick up the harvesters.
Got it. Yeah, and I think, so what's another one here? The one that you see in the movie, but is a little bit more explained, I think, in the book, are film books. So Paul has this film book about Dune that he uses to study and learn about the world before he goes there. And it has this, so one, it has like the projections of, and the audio of like, teaching him about Dune, and you learn about Arrakis through, watching Paul absorb the film book. But it also has it's called a mnemonic pulse. So instead of like a mnemonic device, like having an acronym that would help you when you're studying remember something, it's this like pulse that serves that need to recall information. So I just think film books would be another cool thing to be brought to our universe. I'd love to be a film book collector.
I remember the film book, but I don't remember the pulse piece. And that does tie into some brain therapy research where alpha, beta, and theta waves are used. And I don't remember which one does what, but one of them is to help you train your brain to remember things.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to go, a friend of mine was studying for an exam, and she went to a lady, I went to her as well. And you used to put electrodes on your head, and then you used to play games, and you used your thought patterns to move the ball around on the screen. And it was supposed to help you. All I remember is I used to come back totally exhausted after doing it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to think about whether the technologies kind of proposed could work in today's world, if they actually have any sort of scientific substance to them, or if they're just kind of creative. That is kind of interesting to think about.
Well, something that always fascinates me about science fiction, that's probably why I read so much of it, is people that are writing these books are thinking ahead to what is possible. And if you think about some of the stuff like Conan Doyle or Asimov, or any of those guys that were writing books in the 40s and the 50s, where the technology was what it was, and they were conceiving things that we actually use today in some respects. You look at the original Star Trek episodes, and things that they talk about there we have already. Things that we don't have as well, of course.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's one of the things that I find fascinating, because you've got to conceive the whole world and the usage of this thing. Like, I can't wait for holographic screens. I can't wait for a Neuralink. because I just think that will accelerate things drastically.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Heather Bicknell is our producer and editor. Thank you, Heather, for your hard work on this episode. Please subscribe to the series and rate us on iTunes or the Google Play Store. Follow us on Twitter at the DWW Podcast. The show notes and transcripts will be available on the website www.digitalworkspace.works. Please also visit our website www.digitalworkspace.works and subscribe to our newsletter. And lastly, if you found this episode useful, please share with your friends or colleagues.